What's going on, everyone? Bryan MacDonald here. I am the director of e-commerce for Almost Pride. I am joined for the first time ever. I think the Guinness Book of World Records could probably take note of this. This is the first time that multiple raw pet food brands have gotten together and filmed a episode talking about the industry in general. So this is the Raw Roundtable, episode 1. Hopefully more episodes to come. All depends on what you think about this. So please let us know. Reach out to Amy, reach out to Kelley, Billy, myself. If you guys want more of these episodes, we'll bring more folks on. We'll get in deeper into these discussions, but we'll start with Kelley. So I'm joined by 3 amazing guests in the raw pet food space. Kelley is the owner and founder of Green Juju. Now, Green Juju started in 2014. It's been around for a long time, but Kelley, just run folks through, who you are, how you started, and where you are today.
I'm Kelley. I'm the owner, founder of Green Juju. I think like many of us, I started in this industry because of a sick pet who had a rare diagnosis with no good options. And I started looking into what I was doing for my own health and my own diet and how I could apply it to my dog, and kind of struck upon something that seemed to not only help her, but I saw was missing from a lot of pets' diets. And 12 years later, here we are with not only frozen veggie greens blends, but a whole raw diet and many other products.
Love it. I love it. And now Billy, so we're joined by Billy as well. And Billy also works for Green Juju. Now, Billy's the vice president of nutrition and formulation for Green Juju. And Billy, you've been there since 2021, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah. So run folks through. I'm assuming a lot of folks that I talk to already know who you are, but for those that don't know, run them through a little quick elevator pitch.
Yeah, I've been in the industry like 15 years. And my passion is really getting stuck in the weeds of nutrition and the finer details. And I love creating things and making products. And so in 2021, when I was leaving my last job, I flew out to Seattle and I said to Kelley, "Hey, I want to work for you. Will you have me?" And she did. So I was lucky in that regard. And we have been making products ever since. And it's just really been a joy because there's a lot of freedom there for us to kind of create new things that have never been done before. So it's been a very good 5 years this summer.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's great. It's kind of cool too. Like, when we initially had this discussion, I'm like, oh, I want a bunch of brands a part of this, and I think we're in a good spot now where we have 3 brands in the space, and it gives an opportunity for all of us to sort of share in detail too as well, in regards to what we do and where we're coming from and what we plan on doing, versus making this a very quick and nonchalant sort of interviews. Amy, we're gonna end with Amy here. We'll end with myself.
Okay.
Amy is the co-founder and chief brand officer of We Feed Raw. If anyone has Instagram or Facebook, I'm assuming you've seen a We Feed Raw ad in your time scrolling.
Yes.
So Amy, fill us in who you are, where you are, and where you come from.
Yeah, I'm currently in Charleston, South Carolina. I lived in New York City for 18 years before moving here. But yeah, my sister was actually the original founder of We Feed Raw. She started it way back in 2009. It was not called this. It did not look like this. It was a very small, company based in Austin, Texas. Like Kelley, was an animal lover. My sister and I were raised by parents who were big animal lovers and rescuers, so we were always sort of exposed to that. And I always say that the sort of catalyst for my sister really getting into this was the big pet food recall in 2007 that had to do with contaminated wheat gluten. Chinese manufacturer tried to boost the protein levels in the wheat gluten by adding melamine. And I think there was another chemical, Billy, you might remember. But anyways, this got into the pet food supply in the US and killed and made sick thousands of cats and dogs. So at this point, it really was big news and made headlines, and people, I think at that point, really started to think more critically about what they were putting in their pets' bowls. And my sister was part of that. So in 2009, she kind of, she had started making raw for her own dog. She had 10 rescues at one time. And so saw the benefits immediately from switching them from an ultra processed diet to a fresh, raw, biologically appropriate one. And, it just grew organically. She started making meals for her friends' dogs and then their friends' dogs. And she and her fiance, Rich, had this nice growing business for a few years. And then really sadly, my sister in her early 30s was diagnosed with late stage colon cancer. So at that point, my family and I were all on the East Coast. We helped to move them to Maine. And at that point, my sister moved from this sort of Austin only business to a Shopify site where she could ship nationally. So at that point, it really helped to grow the business exponentially. And I always say it was like for this really sad reason, but it was this really like this turning point, a pivotal point for the business. And so she worked on this business until the last week of her life. She was completely dedicated and passionate about it. And when she died, we were all completely heartbroken, but it wasn't the type of business that you could pause and return to. Like, oh, let us think about it for, a year or 6 months and we'll grieve and come back. It was like very hands-on.
Yeah.
Kelley, I'm sure you can relate to this. There's just like points in a business where you're just like, meat was getting delivered. Like people were waiting for their orders. It was like, we had to either like decide then and there that we were going to keep it going. So my family and I all stepped in to keep this business going. And that's kind of what happened. And I went back to New York City where I had my full-time job and as a creative and marketing. And I made this my second job. So at that point, I really focused on creating what We Feed Raw very much looks like today. We came up with the name. I hired a creative agency. We really did this huge we created a brand, right? At that point, it was really just a supplier of raw. And I knew with my background how important brand is. And like you said, Bryan, earlier, we were talking, there's a lot of crappy pet food branding out there. It's sort of dated. And I knew how important it is to really stand out. So that's what we did. I think we were talking about this the other day in our sort of recap of 2025, but we've shipped over 20 million meals. The company has grown so much. We have an amazing team. And I'm just really proud to, be where we are today. It's been very hard. This is not an easy business. We can all, I'm sure commiserate on that. It's just not the type of business you get into unless you're really passionate about it. I think every person who has started a raw food company or even works in one at a high level does it because they believe in it so much, because you wouldn't be able to stick around without that passion. So
No,
that's my
that's
intro.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And it's almost it's pretty cool too, because my grandfather passed away now 6 years ago, and he was a big golfer, and he had this like custom putter business at like 83 years old. And he would like make people custom putters, and he taught me how to do it.
Mhm.
And it's just something I just wasn't passionate about. If he probably passed away and he's like, "Oh man, hopefully Bryan took care of my custom putter company." It's like, sorry, Grandpa, like that's long gone. But
Right.
it's got to be cool to know that she's got to be extremely proud of where you guys are, because obviously what you guys have done probably in the past 4 years is pretty remarkable. So it's
Yeah,
awesome.
I
That's
definitely
awesome.
feel like that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm Bryan MacDonald. I work for Almost Pride. So I'm a director of brand and e-commerce. Sort of a funky title. I don't even know if, I can sort of encapsulate things that I'm doing on a daily basis. However, we are a fourth generation family owned and operated business in Connecticut. So we've been around since 1950, and got into this business in a weird way. Who's a good friend of mine who now took over the business and is the fourth generation owner and operator. He is a CFO, finance background, insurance background, and he got into the business and he knew that I I can't do it alone. I need a crazy wingman with me that's going to handle marketing and e-commerce and branding. So they had a great product for a very long time. They were doing human food up until the mid 90s. Very similar story. His grandmother had a sick dog, Harley, who was set to be put down. And then, within a week's time span of, they already had the USDA functionality in terms of machinery and operations, and they were already doing custom cuts of poultry. So for those of you on the East Coast, your Big Y's and Stop and Shops of the world, Miller Farms, who is the umbrella of Almost Pride. Miller Farms was the poultry supplier for those grocery chains up and down the East Coast for decades. And we were raising anywhere from like 50 to 80,000 turkeys on the family property every single year. So we already had the machinery, already had the processes, and she's just like, oh, let's just like throw some organs and bones in there. And next thing you knew, she was a wild woman, almost like the female version of me, on a Harley, coolers on her Harley, like duct tape to the Harley, going to pet shows in like the 90s and early 2000s. And she'd get kicked out of the pet shows, middle fingered by, your Purines of the world and your big Kibbles of the world. And she's like, no, this is the future. She was like one of the pioneers in that time. And it just kept growing. The issue was with the business is it stayed very localized in New England on the East Coast for decades. The product was really good. but the way in which distribution was handled, packaging was handled, branding was handled, it stayed very old for too long. So Adam saw the opportunity to take it over, and brought me along for the ride. So it's been a lot of fun the past few years, but it's cool. We're on a family property that's been here in the family for 80 years. Auntie Cal, hitting her 80s, is still living on the corner, and jumps into meetings, every week. And so it's a pretty cool experience, because we answer to the family and for the family, and for what our customers want, and we're not like controlled by any sort of financial dollar. So it's been a really cool ride, but yeah, I'm excited, man. It's been getting into the pet industry the past couple years has been probably not just, God, the birth of my kids is up there. I mean, the birth of your kids has to be up there, top, one of your top things, right? But then like getting into an industry that you love also falls right under your kids being born. And I think, that's been it for me.
Well, I love what you guys have done with the brand. And I remember Almost Pride from before, but you guys have done a great job. Your Instagram is awesome. It's perfect for your brand. Like, it's very distinct, and it's funny, and it's memorable, and it's real people behind the brand. So
I appreciate that.
congratulations on that. And
I
Nina,
appreciate it.
that deserves a raise. So
Yeah, Nina crushes it. Nina crushes it.
yeah, hardest work.
When I first started, I'm like, all right, so like, what's our revenue stream? And they're like, oh, like we drop a bunch of pallets off to people's driveways. And this was like 4 years ago. And like, yeah, we had a big co-op brand. Like, for those of you that have been in Raw, that are listening to this, been in Raw for a long time, like co-op is sort of like what grew Raw originally, right? The category originally. It was a bunch of just like wild women throughout the United States that would get a bunch of like bones and organs and meat delivered to their driveway. And then they would sell it to their friends, and they'd make a margin percentage off of it. But we still have that business. Jan runs it. And we still have that part of the business, but it's pretty cool to see it evolve and continue on. But I think, getting into it, I guess we'll go back to Kelley here, because it's pretty cool, like talking through every time now that we're in neighborhood pet, right? It's not independent pet, it's neighborhood pet now. Who knows what it'll be in a couple years, but it's neighborhood pet now. And anytime we talk to stores, right, we're Almost Pride's in a bunch of stores throughout the United States, Green Juju always pops up. And Green Juju pops up for a particular reason, right? Every brand has the thing that they're very good at. And what I've noticed with Green Juju, Kelley and Billy, what you guys have built, is its quality and its nutrition, right? Those are the first two things that pop up every single time someone, I bring up Green Juju to them, or bring up, hey, who do you have in your freezer right now, right? Most of them obviously are saying your brand. So what was the vision, Kelley, how the company started and where you are today, and what made you gravitate towards that focal and pillar point of the brand? And then after that, two-part question, the addition of Billy joining the team, how has that helped the brand evolve going forward?
Good 2 parts.
I'm interested to hear the answer to that one.
You'll
I got you, Billy. Billy's like, end of your reviews.
It's your
right,
holiday
exactly.
card.
So I say that I kind of happened into this business. Before this business, I had a dog walking business. So I was like in the industry somewhat, just not where I am now. But when Bailey was that dog, I got her when I was 19. She was that 20s era dog, that we just attached to so hard. She was only 9 when she got diagnosed with this rare tumor. It wasn't even a rational thought of like, what do? I was just, you can't die. I have to fix you. And so I think that I went to the far end of everything has to be the best thing I put in your body. Like, I will not put a chemical in your body. Everything will be organic. Everything will be like the very best thing I can give you, because I need you to live. Like, I have to fuel you in a way that is going to support your body through this. And so I was doing this for my dog. And then as I was doing this, I had a dog walking business. And everybody's like, well, what are you doing for Bailey? Because you can't do chemo or radiation or any of the traditional things. I was like, well, I'm feeding her this green stuff. And so my dog walking clients were like, well, that's interesting. Can I have some? So I started dropping off these little frozen green things as I'd pick up the dogs for the park. And I was like, well, I know it's safe, because I was working with a holistic vet and a conventional vet and the oncologist, and everybody's like, can't hurt. So I was like, I know it's safe. I don't know what it's going to do for your dog. I know that I'm doing it for my dog for, detoxification and anti-inflammatory and to, antioxidant support and all the reasons I was doing it. But then people started coming back and they're like, well, my dogs are shedding less, or they have more energy after the park, or they're not as achy, or their poop is better, like all those things that we hear. And so that got me thinking like, well, why is this? And 12 years ago, people literally laughed at me for suggesting to feed plants. These days, when we're in the raw category, like dark leafy greens are kind of it's not unheard of, right? They're kind of in the top list of things that we would add. But back then you were laughed at. But I saw what was happening to my dog and to these other dogs. And so I was like, no, this is a thing. And I went back and researched why it was a thing and how it was helping support. And so I think that's where our quality and our values come from. That this wasn't sitting down and writing a business plan. This was real life, seeing what I was able to do with my dog and to other dogs, and literally trying to keep my dog alive. There was no room for compromise.
Yeah.
And I think that's just stayed. I mean, it's my personal values. I try to feed my kids like that too, but you know how kids are. It's what I
How old are your kids, Kelley?
5 and 8.
Okay. Yep.
Trying to have that like positive food influence and also be like, you guys, come on. So I think it's me. Like, this brand is me. It's what I care about. It's what my values are. And so it's what I put into the products that we make because it's what I'm proud of and it's what I believe we should be doing. So I think it's one of the things that I love about this company is that it truly is all me. It's Billy, you're coming up next. Don't worry. But in terms
Feels
of
like I thought I did some good stuff, but I guess not. Yeah.
No, but in terms of values, I don't have any investment. I can make my own decisions. Like, these are the things that are important to me. And we've been able to stick with that. So I think that's the quality and values piece. Billy and I had been friends for years before we started working together. When I was selling these little green things, I'm really not a salesperson. That's not my strength. But I had gotten to know Billy. I was learning about the raw goat's milk that he was selling. And I found myself talking about the raw goat's milk more than my greens because I just had this thing where I was uncomfortable selling somebody on something. But I could talk about how the goat's milk had the probiotics that were feeding the prebiotic, or sorry, other way around. But the prebiotics, the probiotics, and the goat milk and the greens were working together. And one of my I am a raw feeder. I believe in raw feeding, obviously. I also believe that people, no matter where they are, should be able to add something to that bowl. And so the greens and the goat's milk are always the thing that I recommend. So that's kind of how I got to know Billy, was honestly selling his product more than mine back then. And then we stayed friends. Whenever he was in town, we'd go get coffee and just catch up. And when he came to me and asked me for a job, first of all, I thought he was tricking me. But second of all, it was something I knew I had to jump on. I didn't really know how I was going to figure it out. It was just me at the time. It was in a pandemic. I made him meet me outside at a park bench. It was one of those things that in business, you're just like, okay, I'm making this jump and I'll figure it out later. But bringing Billy on has tremendously changed the course of this business. And it has been so much fun. I call him my food designer because I'll be like, hey, I have this idea and I want this, and can you make it happen? And he will dive into the spreadsheets and the formulation and he will figure out how to make it happen. And it's been so much fun. We actually brought somebody else onto our team to help essentially wrangle Billy and I because we have too much fun in this formulation world that we needed somebody with a bit of strategy and a bit of like, hey guys, hold on, have you thought about this? But one of the things that when you look at Green Juju, one of the things that I think people notice first is our food and how we were able to formulate that so much differently than the standard raw food that you see. And my dream that I asked Billy for is I want a food that has no synthetic vitamins or minerals and doesn't have fish oil. And everything that I've created in this company has gone back to my own sensitive pets and what they can or can't have. And I had 2 dogs that couldn't have fish oil, which if you've ever tried to go into a pet store and find anything without fish oil, it's essentially impossible. And so that was one of my dreams. And Billy was able to create that by making sure that we always had the best grass-fed, pasture-raised sourcing. So it had the correct omega-3 to 6 ratios. And that allowed us to eliminate needing fish oil and the synthetics. So that's just an example of how we have worked together. But it has been so much fun. And he's making my food formulation dreams come true.
Love that. Billy, how do you respond to that, Billy? That's pretty good praise.
Yeah, no, I will take it. It was interesting in coming to Green Juju. So I grew up in the industry, in a very creative process with 2 friends and mentors, Jack and Roxanne, that it was a very free flowing process. And so I knew I wanted to work with Green Juju and Kelley specifically because my passion comes from doing things that haven't been done before. And Kelley had already envisioned that for so long with the green blends and creating those things. And even honestly, the treats that she did before I got there, all these things, there's elements of those things that are just totally different than what was on the market. And so I knew that we would fit together well in that regard. But also I knew that it was like we could do so much more. So, we didn't have a food yet. We didn't have these things yet. And so, I wanted to be in on, creating that stuff too. And so it's been a really, great transition for me personally. And I think too that there's just within the whole Green Juju team, there's just a lot of trust there. So there's just a lot of like, we're all very, very dedicated. I say that when I started in this industry, I basically emailed someone who later I became very close with, who I didn't know at the time. And I was like, I need to be in this industry and you need to hire me. And she was like, okay, cool, but we can't pay you. So, I worked for free for 2 years to get into this industry just generally. And I feel like a lot of that passion comes through in the entire team. So it's just been cool to, create new things within that spectrum.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it shows too, just like I said, from someone that's obviously not a part of Green Juju. It's the one thing that I hear about all the time. It's their passion and dedication to providing the best, quality either ingredients or product that is available, in the distribution channel that it's in. So that's, huge kudos to you, because I think it's something to be really proud of. And it's something that's admirable too, where yeah, imagine being known for being the best quality and nutritionally focused brand, like even in the neighborhood pet channel. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. So
Thank you very much.
yeah, huge kudos to you guys on that, because that's something that we hear all the time.
It's very true that, in the health and wellness space, especially, I think like the best companies are the ones where the business opportunity presented itself later. Like you never really like the best. I think this is just especially true for health and wellness, but like it's never an entrepreneurial pursuit. I don't think, it's like it sort of becomes like later, like, oh, actually, this could be a business, but you're just doing it because you love animals or you believe in it. So I think that just tends to be a common theme that you see with like the best of the best in a space, health and wellness, which I would
Yeah,
say is
because
feeding it.
if you're an entrepreneur and you're like, oh, like what do I want to do? If you're looking to make a bunch of money and put a bunch of cash in your pocket year in and year out and hit your EBITDA and cash flow numbers, don't get into raw pet food.
No,
I mean,
I say
like
that all
that's probably the last thing that you should be doing.
right.
So it is pretty cool being a part of an industry that's like people are doing it for the right reason. Most of them are. But yeah, so Amy, now you're on the inverse side of that, right? You're a brand in which, not on the nutrition side of it, but in terms of the way in which, yeah, I was like, oh, that sounds bad. I caught myself there.
We don't hear
Yeah.
about it.
Horrible segue. But the way in which that We Feed Raw is shown to the market is different, right? The channels that you operate in, right? You're not in neighborhood pet. You guys are on e-commerce, right? You have your select set of proteins. And so walk us through a little bit in regards to when you came into this fire, right? Because I feel like a lot of people in pet either started it because of a dog or cat, personal reason, or they were thrown into the fire. There's very few people that really sit in front of a table and are like, hey, you know what I should do? I should sell raw pet food, right? So walk us through your experience on when you came into the business, what it looked like. Was it called We Feed Raw? What were the things that were offered? How did the transformation grow into like what it is today?
Yeah, no, it was not called Leafy Raw. And as I touched on earlier, it's just really a supplier of raw food. It was, when my sister first started this in 2009, I mean, talk about fringe. It was like truly fringe, like it was really like the weirdos feeding this way. We love those weirdos because they're why we're here today. And it's no longer fringe, but raw feeding is not mainstream. It's still not mainstream, right? It's still, a $45 billion pet food market with fresh and making up 3 of that. Farmer's dogs probably taking most of that too, right? So I've seen over the years, it's been so cool to see the interest grow and the market grow, right? And even more raw companies popping up, which I think is great. Like that's why I think we all have like such a solidarity. I mean, like I've talked to both Kelley and Bryan on a personal level. Like we've exchanged stories. We give each other support. Like I think some people from the outside might think that there's just like this fierce competition, but it's not. It's not. We are all. I think most raw companies feel that, right? We're in this together. We're going up against the incumbents. We're going up against big pet food. That sounds a little bit like we're going, but it does feel like that sometimes, right? Because you have to change people's minds. Big pet food has marketed to us for decades that this, dogs should be eating this ultra processed food and that it's science backed and like anything else is dangerous to your dog or unnecessary to your dog. So we've definitely like since starting to like where we are today, you know, we work with a lot of experts, we work with nutritionists, we work with vets. I've definitely seen the vet category grow and as in terms of like, you know, being more open and accepting of it. But that still is a big area of, what should I say? It's a struggle. It's a struggle to get conventional vets to be willing to I'm not even looking for a promotion, but like not scare clients away from feeding this way. Really educating the consumer is still very important, you know, on like how raw can be safe, that raw can be complete and balanced, you know, that there is a safe way to do it. So I think that, you know, being in the D2C space too and not in retail in any way, we're very close to the customer, which is great. But it's also like, like basically, you know, a social comment away or we love being able to have that connection with them. But it's like, you really have to be like on your toes. So does that answer your question? Kind of like how it's really kind of like from when we first started to where we are today, I would say deeply rewarding to see how much more, I think even in the last year, I've noticed that raw feeding, there's been a lot more headlines about raw feeding, right? The mainstream media loves to trash raw feeding, but I think it's just because it's like more a part of the public discourse. So there's more scrutiny of it, but it's like, whatever. I mean, those headlines don't really, it's just like they come and they go and they don't really do anything, honestly, I don't think raw company sales, because I think people have started to question. And I think we always say our customers love to have that like light bulb moment. Like when you explain to people like why raw is the best way or why it's most bioavailable or biologically appropriate, it makes sense. Like it doesn't take a lot to be like, no, this is the way dogs have been eating in the wild. And kibble was invented in 1956. So I think it's really fun for people to have that light bulb moment. And obviously once you switch your dog, you start seeing benefits within like the first week, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. That's great. And I sort of see it from a different angle, right? Obviously, we're in neighborhood pet, we're direct to consumer, and then we have this old school legacy channel. And when I first came into pet, I remember everyone's like, farmer's dog. It was like the big thing, right? Like 2.5 years ago, they were just doing under $1 billion. This in 2025, they're projected to do just over $2 billion in top line revenue. And they were trashing on them. And I told Adam, I go, Adam, let them spend money. I love it. Spend more money. Spend the most money you can. Go berserk. Get 5 Super Bowl ads this year for all I care. Because what I've noticed is before 5 or 6 years ago, there wasn't a bridge to go from kibble to raw. It was a very weird pathway for consumers to jump right from a human food McDonald's diet or fast food diet to the extreme, which is wake up every morning at 5 a.m., go to LA Fitness, get home before the kids wake up, make your protein shake, have your smoothie, etc. That was the extreme that pet food consumers saw, right? It's a very hard thing to go over. And what Fresh Pet and your Farmer's Dogs of the world did is I'm like, they're creating a bridge. And a lot of our net new consumers, we don't go after kibble people. It's too expensive. There's too much education involved. Your life cycle on the consumers in terms of capturing them is so long. It's too expensive. So I'm like, let's just go after the people that are on Fresh Pet and Kibble and Farmer's Dog, and we'll see how it goes. Well, after a year, we noticed that a lot of people were like, hey, I knew that I needed to feed my dog something healthier. I just saw that, yes, I'm seeing the benefits from it, but I know that it could be better, right? I'm seeing, frequent diarrhea, which is like a big thing that we get from these companies, or I'm seeing some sort of like lack of energy as the day goes on. And I've seen you guys on social, or I saw you at the store, whatever the case may be. And then they come to us. Well, that's an easier, movement to get a consumer to move up to the healthiest part of the food chain. So that's the way that I envision the growth of not only Almost Bride, but like the raw category in general. Is for so long, the thing that really struck a nerve with me is you got to feed raw organs, bones. Oh, you're going to love it. And like a 38-year-old mom with 3 kids and a golden retriever in their backyard, they're like, no, I'm not doing that. What are you, nuts?
Yeah.
It was too hardcore, too fast.
Yeah.
And the worst thing that, in my mind, the worst thing the raw category did was call themselves raw. I truly believe if they switched the name from raw to something else, the category would already be 3 or 4x the size, because the
But do you
name
think that
raw.
I don't know. I'm like having this argument right now. It's not an argument.
It's not an argument. And listen, I love this.
Yeah,
This is why we're doing this.
with my
This is why we're doing
CEO and
this.
CMO, they're like, there is a question, like, should we be leaning more into fresh versus raw? But like, first of all, I think that there are positive connotations with raw, right? Like, I think that it's natural. You see it all like on beauty product. Like, there's something about, I mean, raw meat, I know, is a little different, but I do think like then you're just like everyone else. Like, I don't know. I feel like there is interest in raw.
So here's a cool exercise. We just did this a few months ago. I'm a big post-purchase survey guy. Like, you want to find someone that's a bigger post-purchase survey guy. I love to meet them because I love it. And I do it in my neighborhood too, just because I live in like our ICP for all of us is like my neighborhood. That's literally, there's 211 dogs, 300 homes, middle class America. And one of the coolest questions that we did was we encompassed, here's 10 words. Circle the 3 most, what the verbiage I used, aggressive words out of these 10. Circle them, right? Click them. Raw was the number 1 response we got after sending that out to over 183,000 people. Okay. So what that told me was, okay, well, we can't call it fresh because then people are like, oh, it's fresh pet, it's farmer's dog. It's like, I don't know if you guys have like seen our stuff or like, some of the SEO stuff we do on the website obviously is like for, strategic purposes of it. But it's just healthy pet food and it arrives frozen and you just happen to thaw it out and feed it. And that way in which there's no like right way, I guess, that I've come up with yet that's allowed me to say like use these words instead, but it's like the direction and vision of getting those average 35 to 48-year-old women that have been feeding Costco and whatever Kibble for a long time, or maybe they moved to Farmer's Dog because it's Farmer's Dog's turned into the consumer mindset behavior of like when Louis Vuitton became popular 15, 20 years ago, and every mom had a Louis Vuitton. Oh, I need to get a Louis Vuitton. Cheryl, like, this is a true story, and then I'm gonna move on because I can keep talking about this. I go to my daughter's dance. We pay way too much money for dance. My daughter can't dance. She's almost 6 years old. We've probably spent $8,000 the past 2 years on her trying to dance. She can't dance. She can't do it. I go, babe, listen, this has to be a decision that we make as a family. We should gather around the table and come to the decision that Eva's not. This isn't her. Okay. And we were at a dance recital, and don't get me down the rabbit hole on that. Too expensive. You have to pay for the dress. I'm going to keep going on that. But we're sitting there, and behind us, there's a mom that's like, "Oh, how's Henry doing?" And I'm just like listening to the conversation. "Oh, he's doing well. We just switched to Farmer's Dog." "Oh, I've seen Farmer's Dogs." "Oh, you should switch to Farmer's Dog. Everyone's feeding Farmer's Dog now." And in my head, light bulb went off. I'm like, this is like the luxury era. It's a status era. It's keeping up with the Joneses with dog food. And that's sort of the direction that I'm seeing middle class America gravitate towards is you have to feed Farmer's Dog because like Betty next door across the street's feeding it. Well, you're feeding Kibble. Oof. They're shaming you because they're feeding something better. That's like a mainstream name. But once they get over to that platform, now I'm able to like bring them over and be like, hey, listen, come check out Oma's Pride. I guess I went down 4 different rabbit holes there. I guess the moral of the story is how do we going forward as Omas and as a category embrace it instead of like kind of, sit back and be like, fresh this or cook this or Kibble this. It's like, hey, let's all grow the frozen category together and figure out a way in which we can get the people that feel that it's a harsh sort of word or a harsh thing to like have organs in their dog's bowl come over to the category. And I think that's the biggest gap that's going to explode and 10x the industry, not the nutrition element. Nutrition element's important, but the important piece of it is how do you get people to come over? And getting them over, they already know what's healthier. But the issue is it's very like abrasive, right? It's a consumer mindset, buying behavior mentality that we're in like this like very like rock and roll hardcore category.
So I think that Farmer's Dog and brands of that sort are already doing a huge favor to our category. And while we have raw food, we don't have a lightly cooked food, I still consider us to kind of like bridge across categories because of our veggie blends and like our other toppers and stuff. But the amount of money that Farmer's Dog has put into marketing and Ollie and Sundays and all of these D2C brands, this is all helping us tremendously because it's teaching customers to thaw something, to portion something, to put intention into what's going in the bowl. And whether that is affecting our revenue right now or not, it's helping us and it's helping our category and it's helping elevate the pet parent's mindset of how to feed. And so I still, Amy, you were talking about like the pet industry as a whole and then like our teeny tiny little bracket. Like we're all still together in that teeny tiny little bracket and we're all still trying to accomplish the same objective in providing a better food. And I'm super grateful for those companies and their marketing budgets and somebody else up in Times Square right now. Like we're all in this together. So I just want to say that like, obviously it's a competitor and I'm super grateful for them because you're right. Us as these smaller companies trying to convert a Kibble customer, that's a tough sell, but they're doing a lot of this bridge work for us. And, how that next step happens is I think a question that we all work on. And that's our job. That's what we do. But so grateful for that bridge.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like I'm going to ask you again in a couple of years, Bryan, if you're still not going after the Kibble customer, because we are going after Kibble customer too. I mean, those are the customers that need it the most, right? I mean,
but they often come kind of organically because they're looking for a solution. It's not so much
That's true. They have to be, yeah, totally. But I do think like it's a massive category of, I mean, think about how many people it's like, so, and I do think there's a lot of work being done too, Kelley, not just in the pet food space, but in the human space too, right? Like people are being educated about what's metabolic health, like just protein, animal protein, specifically, even organ meat, Bryan. Like these are all things that are becoming like more sex terms too, right?
It's true.
So that's helping. It's like really coming from all sides.
No, you're right. And I don't say like we don't go after the Kibble customer.
Yeah.
But
You're like, well, take them.
What I do love, right? So like I also walked into a budget where it's, hey, you get like 3% of your spend on revenue on marketing. It's all right. Well, like how can I like, encapsulate the most out of that? And obviously not going after Kibble saved me a bunch of money because I didn't have to, focus on the education piece of it. But I do think you're right. I think they're as like your like Gen Zers of the world, right? Like, as we know now, it's also it's probably the first era where like operators and owners of businesses have had to like truly like dive into consumer behavior and buying power in comparison to before. And what I mean by that is a lot of the buying power still within Gen X and boomers, right? Gen X and boomers still account for a majority of buying power within pet and within every industry. It's just, are people spending enough time now for the Ninas of the world? Because Nina already knows, right? Like, oh yeah, I have to give my dog, I give my cats and dogs tripe, twice a week. If you say the word tripe to my dad, and it's like, oh, it's the inner chambers of a cow's stomach, he's gonna be like, dude, I'm not feeding that. What are you, nuts? So the newer consumers adopting all of those terms, and it's sort of like playing both sides of it, where it's like, hey, let's capture all the consumer buying power and bring them over to our food or the category, but then also like spend the time on the Ninas of the world and your Gen Z and younger millennials of the world that are now buying homes at a later age. They're not getting married earlier than they were before. Instead of having kids, they're buying dogs and cats, right? They're getting dogs and cats. They're focusing more on them than they are, their own personal life, because they know they can't afford a house in the hills and 3 kids and et cetera by the age of 30 anymore. So the economy is one thing, right? That's a whole nother discussion. But what that's doing is it's creating just 2 segments of consumers. It's creating one that is your Ninas of the world that are really involved and invested into their dog's health. And then it's the older consumer where a majority of the, consumer buying power is, and it's moving them along the bridge. And how you resonate with both of those is obviously up to everyone here, but it's pretty cool to see because it's a good opportunity for everyone to sort of take a stab at how they want to go about it. But Billy, what have you seen? So I would say out of all of us here, you've probably been to the most shows, you've been a part of the most conferences, you have more probably nutrition education and time and energy spent than all of us combined. What are you seeing from the consumer now in regards to the nutrition element of the raw category or pet food in general that you haven't seen in the past? What are people talking about? What do they want?
Well, quick story, which I just think is kind of interesting. I went to a HPP and freeze drying conference at the University of Nebraska a couple of years ago when we were going down that rabbit hole, and they had tours that they gave of certain facilities. So they load you up into vans and whatnot. And so in my van specifically was me and the guy who formulates for Farmer's Dog, and then 3 people from Mars. So it was just a very interesting crew of people, and I ended up kind of buddying up with that guy and talking to him a lot. I took a lot of solace in the fact that because he's actually a home fermentation guy like I am, and so he ended up saying, because I was telling him some of the stuff we do, and he's like, "Oh, it sounds like you're doing more interesting stuff than we are." So I was like, "Oh, that's great to hear." But I think so. I would like to say as well. I think one of the things bridging the gap in a real way, because it's all psychological too, is freeze dried food.
Yeah.
Because it just looks like the food they're used to doing. So even if you're not like connecting on the message and you're not connecting on those certain aspects of it, they understand it. Even though it is, it's really just the difference between thawing it or rehydrating it, which is really the same amount of work for either one of those two products. They still think like, I can keep this in my cupboard. And that's, for whatever reason, that's people's preference all the time when it comes to pet products, is like, I want to keep this, at room temperature in my cupboard. So I think that's been really the biggest in the evolution I've seen at, I'm going to use this term now too, neighborhood pet. So the evolution that I've seen is like everyone started frozen, and now you just see a lot more freeze dried. And I think that people are starting to see that you can run, your total sales between those two things and kind of hit two customer bases. But it's funny. I'm I'm kind of stumped by your question. When it comes to like, yeah, I think here's, let me answer it like this. I think here's where the industry is. I think, I remember back when I started, my journey in my own dog, and exactly what Kelley was talking about, that dog in your 20s, mine was like middle 20s. But I think when that started, brands were really just figuring out what raw is, and they were coming to market, and they were going like, they were all in it for the most altruistic reasons, right? They were all like exactly what we're talking about. And then I think an idea was born. And I think that over time, it's been a long time since we've had like, I think we need to do a good job of pushing those ideas forward when it comes to nutrition, because we cannot rely on, this is the best diet for a dog or a cat. Well, we don't know what the best diet is for a dog or a cat. It's always evolving. The science is always moving forward. And so I think that, companies right now are trying to really push for that. But it's cool because we have this really awesome base that we start with, with, hey, let's just get them on a whole food diet. Let's just get them on actual unprocessed food and then kind of move from there. But I think as an industry, we need to kind of keep pushing forward and going like, what's the thing that we haven't figured out that's going to be extending dogs' lives in 5 years by another 10 years, right? Or whatever it might be, that we can find in nature, and that's like food related. So I think that there's a little bit of stagnation currently, but I think, I'm hoping we can see more of that as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would jump on that and say it so makes me actually like really irritated to see the. I don't know if you guys have started seeing headlines about like Ozempic for cats and Ozempic for dogs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're
Yeah.
just jumping.
Yeah.
Like we go from feeding like 95% of, pets are eating ultra processed food. Like, but we're going to jump to like Ozempic. And also like they get open, they don't have phones. Like you're feeding them. Like, can you like, we need to give like the owners a pill so that they have like some self-control. Yeah, go
Amy,
ahead,
I have
Kelley.
to stop you for a second there. I have a 1-year-old lab puppy, and a vet I saw at a conference recently, she was like, labs just need GLP-1s. And I was like, actually,
What?
you're right. She meant it in a sarcastic way.
But so it's like,
This dog,
because
everything
she,
in my house.
oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Even when you're like, no, don't eat it. No, I just was saying, like, I just think there's like, even the longevity pill, which I'm all for anything that we can do to like improve and, make the lives longer of our pets. But it's just like, we're so missing this like glaring, it's like, and people will be like, oh, well, my dogs have been eating this forever, referring to Kibble and it's like, yes, but look at the statistics. I mean, 60% of dogs are overweight or obese. 50% of them are getting cancer by the age of 10. Like something is wrong here, and I do think just this like very, I know it's not simple because it's more expensive than what people are used to paying for pet food, but just feeding real food can be the biggest change that we need to see. But it's just, I guess, typical about, how humans are. We're like the same way with ourselves and like, just take a pill. And, I was talking to someone from Italy, or he lives in Austin, Texas now, but he was born and raised in Italy. And he was saying, I go to the vet here and it's like literally 30 seconds. I talk to the vet and they're like in and out. And it's like, if you have a problem, here's a pill. And he's like, that's how it is with, MDs here too. It's like in Italy, you go to the doctor, you're there for an hour. They ask like, oh, what's going on with your diet? What are you eating? What are you doing for exercise? It's like a whole body. So I just think our system here is flawed when it comes to health for both humans and for dogs.
I think one of the cool things is that we're able to influence how our pets live based on what we put in the bowl and what we do or don't put in it, right? That was one of the biggest kind of revelations for me in starting before I even started this business, but just in working with my own dog, is I felt that her health was in everybody else's hands. Part of it was just genetics. Part of it was, what is the vet going to help me with? And then at home, I was like, oh, this is up to me. Like, I can do this and see this in you, and I can do this and see this in you. And I think, like, if there's one message that I could share with pet parents, is like, you have control over this. Like, you can make a difference. And it's not that whole abandon everything and turn into the LA Fitness at 5 a.m. person. Like, there's little steps you can make. Like, I think you guys would both agree that even with a raw food, you can put just a little bit into a kibble diet. You can start making differences.
Yes, definitely.
And that's something I think we started using that last year. It's like a little bit of raw is better than no raw. It's like, it was like a big thing that we did. I mean, I think you guys have done stuff like that. You guys have done stuff like that. It's like, it's so big too. And that's like a big part of our retail push is we came out with this like 1 pound grab and goes, everything from our completes to our signatures, which is without the AFCO complete formulations for people to just add in sardines, salmon, wild boar, you name it, kangaroo. It's like, dude, just add in a little bit. And that was like a big retail opener for us, because once they started adding a little bit into it and their financial bill didn't increase so much that deferred them away from starting it, just, hey, buy a $12 brick of this or a $10 brick of this. And then next thing you know, a few months down the road, they see the benefits from it. And I think that's a big thing in the category too. It's actually pretty cool that like we're on this call, because we've, like I mentioned, post-survey king here. We've had people, and we still have a bunch of people. I feed green Juju, but I add Oma's Pride sardines or salmon on top of it, or whatever on top of it. Or we feed raw, but I like to incorporate some exotic and intermittent, mix in between we feed raws. Cool. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like that's a whole, or then we'll get, a lot of our consumer base now. And I think, Amy, we've talked about this before, and I think your website probably does one of the better jobs on the 50-50 mix, right? A lot of people still operate on it's all or nothing. And you guys do a really good job. It's like, hey, here's your subscription, but here's your 50-50 option. You want to feed kibble in the morning, raw at night, or half and half? Here's your output, and here's your ease on financial constraint to know that you're feeding something healthier that's not going to, hit your wallets as hard as switching it all at once. So I think that's so important. How has that been doing, by the way? How many of your customers, I don't know if you can share, like a good amount are 50-50 feeders, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, still the most are 100% raw, but we have a good amount. And I don't know what the split is. I'll have to, not that I wouldn't be willing to tell you. I actually just don't know the most recent. But I mean, it makes total sense for people that have multiple dogs in the home, or huge, like a Great Dane, or, a Cane Corso. It's really can be a lot of money. I mean, we do also preach a lot too that, invest more upfront, save later, which is absolutely true. I do believe that, but it's hard for people to value preventative health. I think, so your dog seems fine and you're like, well, they're doing fine on kibble. It's like, dogs are very adaptive creatures, and they survive for a long time on the wrong food. So I think that getting people we welcome always to feed raw is one of our values. Like, however you want to do it, we want to support you. So, top or mixer every other meal. But it's true. It's the same for us. Like if we ate fast food every day, or, versus like 4 days a week, like you're going to see a difference. It does make a difference. I think that just people get intimidated by raw in general. It's like people just stop using their brains. It's like, I don't know what happened. I think it's just like the intimidation of the whole thing. And like, so we really try to hold people's hands, and like, even the transition, people get very nervous about the transition, and it's like, no, it's fine. Just 10 days and gradually. But I think there's just, because there's not always the vet support, because there's a lot of fear mongering out there, you really have to combat that at every step of the journey, I think.
Yeah. No, it's
As
great.
you get bigger too, I think you you start to see that more because you're reaching a more mainstream customer versus like when we first started, it was like, those amazing weirdos that did it. They were like, yeah, of course. I just don't want DIY. We were really talking to DIY raw feeders, and now that's like
Yes.
really
Totally
too much.
different.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Oh, you're amazing weirdos, like a specific We Feed Raw t-shirt. Like you are.
I know, the amazing weird, founded by amazing weirdos. Yeah, I know.
As we get towards the end here, I think it's kind of cool for all of us to share, but also for like consumers that are going to listen to share. Like in 2025, what was your? I guess we'll start with Kelley, and then we'll go through Billy and Amy here. What was your biggest win as a company, and then what's your biggest challenge that you're going to face heading into 2026, and what's your plan to combat that? I think it's pretty cool to everyone. Obviously, should celebrate their wins, regardless of how small or big they are. I think it's important for us, like in the culture of the business. Like our warehouse lead just got his license, and it was like a big thing. Just like little, like the littlest things to the biggest thing. So like, what was your biggest win, and then what challenge do you see in 26 that you're going to tackle?
Who's going? Did you call someone or
Yeah,
you
we'll go Kelley. Yeah, we'll go Kelley. We'll go Kelley.
Kelley?
I think our biggest win is twofold, but one is that we continue to grow. I think of business as like a boiling pot, like of water. You kind of always want to simmer. You always want there to be something going on, because if it's flat, then that's not good. But I also don't want it like bursting bubbles, boiling. We've had a good simmer, and I'm grateful for that growth and the challenges that come with it that have been challenging in a good way, but also supportive to the business. Our team continues to grow in a really beautiful, amazing way that I just feel like we have the right people in the right places, and we have like a great company culture. And I just love waking up and getting to work on this every day. And this has grown so much in the past 12 years that I just feel so grateful that it's still my favorite thing to do. Aside for the kids, obviously, but
Yeah.
I feel very, very grateful for that. Challenges for next year, again, growth. It's a good thing and it's a hard thing. And as we're growing, there's just the growing pains. And I absolutely hate when a customer tells me that they can't get a product that they need, but those things are going to happen between, our production and distribution and any of the steps along the way. The bigger you get, the more you're going to run into those things. And we're just seeing that and feeling that and working really hard to find ways to fix that in the future.
Yeah, love that. And I think that's super important too for like customers that are listening to this is the reason why I love this industry is like Kelley's like being very straightforward and like giving it to you, raw in regards to like her waking up in the morning and being excited about this. What fires me up, especially on social, it's like, and I tell my wife the same thing. She ordered a tumbler Black Friday, Cyber Monday. She was all pissed. I go, you think the owner of that tumbler company, gives a crap that your lid on the tumbler broke? They don't care, right? Like we're in such a unique industry that founders and leaders and owners actually care about their customers and wake up in the morning like excited to work, and they're not worried about like what does their output and productivity look like in order of margin impacts on their shareholders or whatever the case is, right? Like we're in an industry that like people give a shit, and I think that should be like the motto of like raw or fresh or the emerging pet category is like we give a shit. And I think I think it's important. No, I just want to stop by because I think it's important that customers like really understand that, and they're not just buying a product from a company. They're in an era in which the people that they're buying from are people that care. So I think that's awesome. I love that. Billy, what do we got? Talk to me. Talk to me dirty, Billy.
I think my daughter's ability to dance, to just truly dance well, is my life's greatest achievement. So
It's a callback for those of you that are just
that's
joining.
it.
Yeah.
I'm like, Amy, no. So I'm gonna approach this from sort of more of what I focus on, at in Green Juju specifically. I think in 2025, with some of the stuff that we released, it goes back to sort of what I was talking to, but the thing I'm always so proud of with our team, and it's everything. People don't understand maybe how much work goes into new products and things that come out on the market, and it's not just, oh hey, we did this formula. It's everything. It's packaging. It's all those things, and everyone puts it together. It's the business side of things, right? That side of our team. It's all those things. And so I think I'm really proud of how we come together on those things. But I think in 2025 we really did some things that pushed the envelope in terms of nutrition and the health of animals. and the sort of potential of, their health moving forward, which I'm really excited to see as time goes on, and some clinical research we're doing right now, and some things like that. And that also becomes really the biggest challenge as well, for me at least, which is, you know, you can, for those of us who like love to make things like Kelley and I, and that side of teams, like you want to make new fresh stuff, but how do you keep doing that without just turning into making stuff for the sake of making stuff?
Yeah.
Right. Instead of filling a quota every year and going like, we need X amount of products, what do we put in there? Versus, hey, this is a really solid idea. It's never been done before. Let's do it and make that happen. And so I think, I'll go back to 2024, 2025. I think we've done an amazing job of that. And I hope, I think we're up to the challenge, moving forward, that we won't just get into that sort of like stuck rhythm, that we'll be still doing that. But that's
that.
harder, I think, than people understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
for
that's
sure.
awesome. I love that. Amy, talk to me.
Challenges from 2025. Man, I mean, it's like so crazy when you look. We were actually going over this in our team holiday party the other day, like listing out all the, things that when we climbed Mount Everest, and it's pretty crazy thinking back. Avian flu was tough. We never had to deal with an avian flu issue, but just having that out there was very scary. And the headlines and not knowing if it was just going to be this runaway trains. Fingers crossed we don't have to deal with something like that again. Anytime soon. It seems like so far so good this winter, but we grew a lot too. And we introduced freeze dried, which was really exciting. That was a really fun moment for us because it really, like you said, Billy, it really helps people welcome raw easier. I think that they're like, it's an easier product. People feel like it's safer. They don't, they're just like, it's very familiar to them. So yeah, I think we always are growing, and our commitment, and we'll never compromise on our quality no matter what. So just really staying committed to that. We have a lot of things happening in 2026. We're looking at tweaking formulations to be even better, maybe introducing some other products. We haven't announced this yet, but I'll announce it here. We are finally introducing peel back packaging, which is a pain point for our customers. You have to like cut through the patty.
Yes.
So peel back packaging is coming January 1st.
Love that. Love that.
And yeah, it's just also, I guess, figuring out Meta. Once it advertising on Meta is, it is crazy.
Worse than going to a dance recital.
No, but we're really looking forward to 2026. I think it's always where we are now versus where we were before I had this team in place is just night and day. So having the right people to help you, and it just feels so much better. Don't have those like 3 a.m. like wake up like sometimes still have those, but not as much.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the challenges too, like the avian flu was a big one for us. And then also we were this like old family brand for such a long time, had a great product, but we understood that our distribution kind of sucked, packaging kind of sucked, brand sucked. A lot of things were just stuck in the way, and we knew we needed to get the product out there more, and the microphone needed to be louder, the megaphone needed to be bigger, and it was a challenge, and being able to keep up with the growth once we're able to do that, right? The peel back packaging for us, Amy, to give you confidence moving into 2026. Portion packs, I have a bag behind me. It's our number one seller now. Everything's peel and feed, and changing up the feeding instructions, right? I think what a lot of people kind of, at least surveys that I've done, it's like 6.5 ounces or like 7.8 ounces or 9 ounces. It's like, all right, well, are you delivering that to me? Because if not, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not weighing my chicken, right? And that's the other thing I was talking about with the raw category. It's the food scale, like how aggressive it was with the bodybuilders, where they had a way with everything with a food scale. People want like, hey, am I feeding half? Am I feeding a third, a fourth? That's the farmer's dog angle that did really well for them for the growth, at least for the marketing folks that I've talked to over there. So all of that was huge for us, but that was a big hurdle we had to get over. In the website, we were on Big Commerce. I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with Big Commerce before, but I walked into a nightmare. And it was bad. Website was bad. It was just a bad experience. Like I said, the family's mentality of creating the best food that they could was always top notch, but it was the way in which that we were able to portray ourselves or show ourselves or show up and all that. So that was a big challenge that we faced in 2025, that we were able to build a new website in Shopify, and all of that went really, really well. And then I would say the fulfillment side of it. So we fulfilled our own packages in-house. the guys literally right behind this wall were doing it for, 15 years when we were on e-com. So understanding that we had to create a partnership in order to give our customers the best experience, right? So Amy and I have talked about this before, but now the past few months, we're in a great partnership that allows us 2-day shipping within like 93% of the country, all the way from New Jersey to Indiana, California, Texas. So we're all over the place, which is great because it does well for the neighborhood pet channel. We're able to be in fulfill PFX orders and distributor orders, relatively quickly, and our customers are able to get the food. Those were like two big hurdles. It's like distribution of product, and then the way in which that we showcase the ability for customers to buy the product. And then heading into 26 for us, it's how do we match that with our food, right? We know a lot of our recipes, maybe had a little too much bone in it, or we've never really worked with, it was a Wild West in the 90s. You didn't really work with a Billy of the world or a nutritionist. It was like, oh yeah, I think let's get some chicken. But a lot of the a lot of the stuff now moving forward is, we've developed relationships and partnerships with different vets and nutritionists and formulators that are taking away our synthetics out of our food in 26, and we're going to be replacing them with whole foods. With the exception of a few things that we're still working on sourcing wise, and that's another thing within the consumer pet side is sourcing and pricing. I think I've been deep in the weeds. One thing we do here, leadership does every role. So like I've gone through every role for 2 weeks. I know a good amount of, what each role has to encompass. And a lot of it is sourcing. And if you really want that high quality product, you have to charge for it. So that whole reformulation side of it, working through pricing and procurement and making sure that the formula is meeting what we want it to be, but then also not going into consumer and saying, hey, now we're going to charge you, 30% more, 40% more. Those were the struggles that we went through this year that we overcame, and what I foresee going into 26, along with the ability for us to just be like a mainstream raw pet food company that people will know. So yeah, that's what I got. And I think a good way to wrap this up, one thing, if you have a customer that's listening to you or any pet food consumer that's listening, like what's one thing that you want them to take away from not just this conversation, but I think in totality within the category of raw or frozen? What's one thing that you want them to take away from this call? And we'll start with Amy, just because you have your hand on your lip, and when people do that, they're just like in the zone and they're
They're
just
ready
ready to
for
go for it.
to give you an answer. I don't.
Yeah, give me one takeaway.
Is this an existing customer or prospective customer?
Just Amy, who cares? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I want them to take away that, you know, fresh, real food is worth the investment. I mean, it absolutely is. And if you have a pet that you truly care about, it's the number one thing that you can do for their health and wellness, the number one thing. So whether or not you're already feeding and wondering if it's worth worth it to keep going, yes. And if you're considering it, it absolutely is worth it. We see the transformation stories every single day. People have just seen people's dogs, who were suffering from seizures be like, stop having them after a week and never have them again, or, horrible allergies and skin and coat issues, weight issues. So it's really an amazing, say it's not a miracle pill. It's not a, cure all, but it can feel miraculous if you've been feeding something else and then you switch to this. So it's worth it. It's worth it.
Love it. We'll go to Billy next. Let's go, Billy. Billy, what?
I think the number one thing for all the people out there that are, would be listening to this, I think, especially, our retailers and stuff like that, is the number one thing in animal nutrition, in my opinion, is to shoot for quality and hope for quantity. So,
Love it.
everyone kind of gets obsessed with this idea of their dog living forever, which is great. I want my dog to live as long as possible. But the most important thing is that the years they get are as high quality and they're dealing with the least amount of health issues as possible and are just vibrant and healthy. And so if we just focus on that and giving them the best shot every day, and then we can hope that, they live, well into their 20s or however long that might be. But I think that takes a little bit of the stress off of the equation.
I like that slogan. You guys may have to add that to the website, Kelley. Shoot for quality, hope for quantity. I kind of like that. What do we got, Kelley?
I think I would go back to what I mentioned earlier, but we as pet parents are able to make a difference based on what we put in the bowl. And you can start small. It doesn't have to be a full overnight transition. But I would encourage anybody that's even remotely curious just to start by adding something fresh in that bowl and see what happens with your pet and increase, tweak over time, and just know that their health really is in our hands and we can make a big difference.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll take it away with like, don't be afraid. I think it's something that is worth trying. And I think there's a lot in this life, that we live that's worth trying, but for our pets especially, you never know until you try. And that's one thing that, we try to be like the brand of the people and for the people. Like if you go on our social media, you probably don't even know we sell pet food. Amy from We Feed Raw, Kelley and Billy from Green Juju. Hopefully this is one of many different episodes that we do for our Raw Roundtable. I am going to take this. You guys are all going to have this episode. So for those of you that are listening, we can eventually come up with a centralized, location for all this, but, feel free to do what you want with it for social media, your customers and post to your YouTubes and social. But I think it's important. Just let us know what you thought about this, what you want to see. If you want an episode 2, who you want on, what you want to talk about and discuss. But I think it's important for the category to come together and really, be the voice, because a lot of the times it's very segmented. So hopefully you guys all had a blast. Billy, Kelley, Amy, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Hopefully it's one of many more to come,
Yeah.
but I appreciate it. And I know hopefully a lot of the people that are listening will as well. So
Yeah.
thank you guys again. And I forgot we got Christmas coming up. The only reason I remember that is because I had to pour flour on my kitchen countertop and put an elf making a snow angel for my kids to wake up and be surprised that a toy elf is a real elf, and I had to do the whole thing with them. And it's a nightmare. So hopefully you guys listening to this are reminded to do your elf on the shelf tonight for the parents that are listening to this. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you guys celebrate, and have a great rest of the year. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.